The Michigan DNR Hunt Fish app is your digital connection to all things hunting and fishing in Michigan. Buy, store, and display your hunting and fishing licenses, check your points and chances for elk and bear, apply for the draw, and view drawing results. Access all the hunting and fishing regulations, view your hunter safety certificate, and report your harvest, all from within the Michigan DNR Hunt Fish app. Just click the app banner at the top of the page for download instructions at michigan.gov/hunting. You know what that sound means. It's time for the Michigan DNR's Wildtalk Podcast. Welcome to the Wildtalk Podcast, where representatives from the DNR's Wildlife Division chew the fat and shoot the scat about all things habitat, feathers, and fur. With insights, interviews, and your questions answered on the air, you'll get a better picture of what's happening in the world of wildlife here in the great state of Michigan.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wildtalk Podcast. This is your host, Rachel Lincoln, and here with me today, as always, is my co-host, Eric Hilliard. Hello, Eric.
Hello, Rachel. How are you this fine May morning? I feel like we're finally going to start getting some warm weather because I have been sorely disappointed with the way April went.
Oh, I completely agree with you. We had a few days that were super nice, but I am looking forward to some consistency. I will say, though, throughout April, I did enjoy the variety in temperatures in the morning because it was spring migration and there were new birds showing up in my backyard. And it seemed like it was a little temperature related. On warm days, there were more birds singing, but regardless, it was super cool to see a different bird come into my backyard every morning. And when I say see, I mean hear, because I have to use the Merlin bird app to identify all of the birds in my backyard because I cannot remember birdsong. But it was cool. Yeah, and I tell you, most of those birds probably just got blown in here because we had some of the windiest days that I remember in a while, like consistently, where holy cow, it is windy outside. That's completely true. I just read there was a study that came out. This is the windiest spring ever recorded in Michigan. Yeah, I believe it. There were some days walking to work where I thought I was going to get lifted up off the ground and blown into a new region. Somebody's like, oh, that's a new bird. And it's just Eric calling for help up in the top of a tree canopy. Help me. Well, whippoorwill, look up here. Classic Steve Martin. Yeah, so I'm hoping, warm, consistent temperatures in May. I super love springtime. It is definitely my favorite season. We've got really cool spring blooms getting ready to show up. Lupin should be blooming within the next couple of weeks. That's a fan favorite. That's just a good time to be outside. Yeah. I really enjoy coffee out on my patio in the mornings, and it was just so cold in April. It would look sunny, and I'd think, oh, can I go out there? Nope, it's 28 degrees outside. It was just, dang it. Yep, I agree. We did have some freak snowstorms in there too, didn't we? Yep. But here's to a good May. I'm looking forward to a warm May as we head into our summer months. Yeah, and speaking of let's head into this episode. We've got a great one lined up for you here. Wildlife technician Rachel Kanaziz will be joining us to give us a report of the great things happening in the Southwest region. Then we'll talk turkey in the All Things Feathers episode. April, May, and June are a really busy time for turkeys and turkey hunters, so we'll hopefully cover everything you need to know this spring season. And then lastly, we'll learn a little bit more about the semi-aquatic rodent, the muskrat. Of course, we will have our regular Mug Me trivia question for you to win a mug of your own, and we'll be reading the names of our awesome conservation-loving donors to the non-game Wildlife Habitat Fund. So we've got a great show lined up for you, so stick with us, and we will get this show on the road right after a word from our forests.
Trees provide for the well-being of our state. That's why we work so hard to keep our forests healthy and abundant, so wildlife has a home, and so do people, so that there's clean air and water for everyone, and so Michigan's economy can be as strong as the trees that support it, because every branch of forestry ensures that future generations will always have a tree for life and forests for a lifetime. To learn how sustainable forestry benefits your life, visit michigan.gov/forests for a lifetime.
Welcome back to the Wildtalk Podcast. Today we have Rachel Kanaziz, wildlife technician from our Paris DNR field office, to tell us about the work she's doing for wildlife in the Southwest region of Michigan. Thank you, Rachel, for joining us. We look forward to hearing more about your work. But first, tell us about your role in the Wildlife Division and how long you have been with us.
I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the invite. I've been with the state for 4 years now as a wildlife technician. And essentially what that means is that I help manage 3 state game areas across 3 counties, which are Oceana, Newaygo, and Mecosta. And then you noted that I'm based out of the Paris field office, which is on the northern edge of the Southwest region. And it's a pretty neat transition zone, both ecologically and socially. So it makes it a really fun place to live and work.
Well, very cool. So what are some of those projects you're working on this time of year, and why are they important for the region?
A big ongoing project that we're working on is a dam assessment project. So the Wildlife Division as a whole manages 102 water control structures, and Southwest region oversees about a third of those. We currently have 5 dams that we manage out of my office, and we're system evaluating each one to assess the feasibility of either removing, repairing, or revitalizing each of them. And to help make the best decision for each dam, we're working closely with a team of contract engineers, other state departments and divisions, and additional wildlife staff.
What are some of the challenges you've experienced with the dam project so far?
So we're currently in the feasibility phase of this project. So there's a lot of different considerations and perspectives that we're trying to juggle. As wildlife managers, one of our top priorities is the ecological health of our public places and the recreational enjoyment that people can find there. So when it comes to dams, we'd ideally like to restore as many natural stream channels as possible. But at the same time, we have to remember that most of these structures have been in place for so long that the system as a whole has changed in some way over that course of time. And this brings a whole suite of challenges for us to consider as we think about what to do with these dams. And those things that we're thinking about include sediment buildup, downstream effects, wildlife use, and just other recreational values. So as much as we don't necessarily want to count money as a factor as well, that's definitely something we think about in terms of the financial impacts that these systems can have. And we have to think about the resource investments that go into maintaining these structures for the long term. And we think about maintenance costs affiliated with those as well as we consider removing versus revitalizing each dam. And there's also some dams that are hazard rated, which means they're critical for protecting downstream towns and houses. So these types of dams are ones that we really focus on repairing. And just overall, it's a challenge to make sure that we're thinking about as many different factors as possible that could be affiliated with each dam.
Yeah, it certainly sounds complex trying to evaluate all of these dams. And I'm sure part of that evaluation is thinking about how it impacts wildlife, habitat, and those surrounding communities. Could you talk a little bit more about how they directly impact wildlife and wildlife habitat?
So many of our wildlife managed dams were initially implemented to help create more habitat for wildlife. These dams are able to be manipulated to either raise or lower water levels in the system. And that does things like create more edge habitat, which is great for waterfowl. It can create migration hotspots. And both of those are really favorable for waterfowl hunters. These systems also get a lot of use from people who want opportunities for trapping, fishing, boating, that sort of things. And in some areas, wild rice can also be found, which is an example of how these wetland areas add to the cultural importance provided by these systems. There's really just a breadth of effects that these dams can have, which is why it's so important that we consider as many factors as possible and try to make science-based predictions of what the future of these systems could look like based on whether we revise, revitalize, or remove each dam.
It's so interesting to hear all those perspectives. Thanks for sharing. Now, a few episodes ago, we had our terrestrial invasive species coordinator on who discussed invasive species in mid-Michigan. And I know that you are involved in a collaborative effort to treat invasive species in West Michigan, which is a pretty big effort. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm on a team who's actively working to treat hemlock woolly adelgid, or HWA for short. And we're doing those treatments here along the western coast of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. Basically, what HWA is it's a super tiny invasive insect that feeds on the sap of hemlock trees. And then over time, it drains the trees of their nutrients and can ultimately kill the trees if left untreated. So this is a big concern for us, as hemlock trees play an important part of ecosystem health because they do things like keep streams cool for fish and amphibians. They stabilize steep banks. They help prevent erosion with their root systems. They provide thermal cover for wildlife in winter, aid in preserving water quality, and just so many other things. So the risk of losing these trees to HWA is pretty alarming because here in Michigan, we have over 170 million hemlock trees across the state. So even though it's a really big undertaking to try and treat as many of these trees as possible, we know they're an important part of the habitat and losing them would be really devastating. That's why we put so much work into saving them. And our approach here in the Southwest region is to team up and try to tackle as many trees as possible. But because we're faced with the sheer number of hemlock trees found in the areas that we manage, we really have to strategize ways to prioritize key habitat areas and how we can best use the resources we have available. And for the treatment itself, we basically give the trees an injection shot of chemical, and then we come back a few years later and give them another shot. So it's basically like how people get vaccinations followed by booster shots. And then to get our game areas treated, we've had help from so many people, like our local conservation districts, local SISMAs, and other divisions like Forest Resource Division. And really what our goal is that by joining forces, we can treat as many trees as possible and as many state game areas as possible. So far in the Southwest, we've been able to treat about 4,000 trees in Pentwater State Game Area, and that number is going to jump even higher in other game areas as Allegan and Muskegon field offices start their treatment this year. And for the public, they may see signs about HWA treatments when they visit their local state or county parks here in West Michigan. And then if there's landowners who are interested in treating any of their own trees on private property, they should get in touch with their local conservation districts about that. Really, the big takeaway here is that all saved trees are a result of collaborative conservation, which is pretty cool. And it's something that I'm really proud to be a part of. We have some really great people doing some pretty awesome conservation work across the state. And it's really rewarding to learn and work with so many of them.
That is an incredible effort.
So looking at the work that you are doing with dams and looking at this invasive species work you're doing with hemlock woolly adelgid, when it comes to just the type of work that interests you the most as a Wildlife Division employee, do you have a favorite of those two projects? Is one more exciting for you than the other, or are they just part of your job and you kind of dig into it and enjoy the impact that you're making out on the landscape for both of them?
I really like that last part. I would say it's really hard to give one answer of what I enjoy the most. I think that each task we're faced with uses a little different part of our brain and learning something that's a little different with each task. And that's the thing I enjoy about most, is just being surrounded by people who are willing to share the knowledge that they already have, are willing to collaborate on these projects. I really get excited about working together for one big goal, because we're not just isolated little silos where we work. We have it's a huge picture that we have to consider. And when we're able to work together through partnerships and collaboration, we're really helping the greater good as a whole. And I think that's what makes me the most excited about all these projects that we deal with.
Yeah, great answer. The collaboration that happens in the conservation corner is pretty outstanding. So thanks for the work that you're doing to make that happen. These two projects and so many other projects. You're so plugged into the region and your area. And so we really appreciate your insights and for giving us a closer look on the work that the Southwest region is up to this time of year. It's clear that these efforts make a big impact for wildlife across the region and across the state. So thank you for sharing with us, Rachel. All right, folks, you don't want to fly off now. We will be back in a minute to talk turkey in the All Things Feather segment coming up next.
There are many camping and lodging opportunities available in Michigan state parks. When you choose state park campgrounds, you get more than just a campsite. State parks offer a diverse range of recreational opportunities including hands-on instructional classes, nature programs, places to fish, boat launches, family-friendly events, and much more. Reservations can be made 6 months in advance, so why wait? Visit midnrreservations.com or call 1-800-44-PARKS to make a reservation.
Welcome back. This episode, we're talking Toms, Jakes, and Jennies, also known as thunder chickens or gobblers, but most commonly known as the eastern wild turkey. Wild turkeys are one of Michigan's largest native bird species with a wingspan of 5 feet and a length of 4 feet, and they weigh up to 23 pounds. It is a whole lot of bird. Now, many of us have probably seen turkeys before. It's pretty common sighting as you're driving down the road to look at a field or to have them walk through your backyard, or perhaps end up in your driveway this time of year looking very curiously at the shiny bumper on a pickup truck. That seems to happen a lot in the spring. But did you know that not so long ago, turkeys were almost completely wiped out in Michigan and were seen almost nowhere?
Right, so turkeys were almost extirpated from the state. Why is that? What happened exactly?
A lot of habitat loss and unregulated hunting. So in the late 1800s, prior to European settlement, we think there was about 94,000 birds across much of the state. So a strong population of turkeys. However, as Michigan was settled and we started to remove trees and forests and grasslands to create communities, we removed a lot of wildlife habitat that turkeys and lots of other wildlife species relied on. And we also hunted them to pretty depleted numbers in order to feed these communities that we were building. And it really put the hurtin' on the wild turkey population to the point where there were no turkeys left in Michigan. Now, the word extirpated means that they could be found elsewhere throughout North America, but not in the state of Michigan. However,
yeah, what happened? How did we bring them back?
now that is a great conservation story. So in about the 1950s, the Michigan DNR, along with some real enthusiastic hunters and really great conservation partners like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Wild Turkey Federation, partnered to bring turkeys back to Michigan and to make sure they have the habitat that they need to be successful. And that started with us purchasing Pennsylvania turkeys. So truly, the turkeys that are here in Michigan nowadays are eastern wild turkeys, but they were collected in Pennsylvania and brought to Michigan, where they were then released. So these organizations band together to, one, collect turkeys and bring them to Michigan, but two, to also make sure that the habitat turkeys needed were here for them to thrive in. So turkeys need forested areas next to grassland habitats. So they're primarily feeding on insects and seeds, things that are growing in grassland areas, and then they roost, so they sleep at night up in the tops of these trees. And so they need this very particular habitat of a mix of grasslands and trees. And so we started to remedy or help wildlife habitat return. And with it, once we brought some turkeys back to the area, they were able to have their components they need to survive. And the population really took off. So in 1965, we were able to have our first regulated spring turkey season here in southern Michigan, and we've had a regulated hunt pretty much ever since. And so we, regulate the amount of turkeys that can be harvested, in addition to continuing to have high quality management for turkey species. And it has led to so many turkeys across the entire state. Now they can be found in every county. In our latest estimates, we think there's well over 200,000 turkeys in Michigan. Now, over the decades, there have been a few reintroductions of wild turkeys over time and a lot of collaboration with many of our conservation partners to create the success of this recovered species in Michigan. Nowadays, we see turkeys frequently. They are quite noticeable, especially the males with their broad, round wings and their large feather tails, all fanned out as they strut to show off their physiques in hopes of attracting a mate. There are A few other peculiar characteristics of the eastern wild turkey that are really cool to watch, especially during the breeding season, which is happening this time of year through mid-June. That's when we'll see males with their large fanned out tails. But you also might notice a few additional characteristics. So,
like gobbling, perhaps.
Yeah, they're called gobblers for a reason. So turkeys are an extremely vocal animal, and they are basically calling out to tell other males where they are and to stay away from their potential mates.
One of the interesting characteristics of the eastern wild turkey is definitely their head, right? Because there's no feathers on it. You look at most birds and they've got feathers, and then you just have this bald bird strutting around with tail feathers all spread out, and they've got a beard hanging from their neck. They're just a very unique looking bird.
Yeah, without question. Very unique looking. And in addition to just being completely bald, they also have a very colorful head. So the males have really a blue hue to their face, and they have this bright red appendage that hangs off the beak called the snood. So this flappy appendage that hangs off of their beak. And in addition to the snood, they also have a wattle, which is this pretty large fleshy flap of skin that hangs off of their neck. But this part of their anatomy does have some utility to it. So researchers think that part of this wattle, this big red beard-ish looking thing, actually helps to cool the turkey down on hot days because it releases heat. Birds can't sweat and they have compact feathers, and so it might actually be a heat-releasing mechanism that's happening. But additionally, it also does help with the breeding season and can turn a really vibrant shade of red, basically as a giant red sign to potential mates that this is a healthy male looking to pass on its genetic material. So a lot of quirky and unique characteristics with wild turkeys.
Yeah.
Now, during the breeding season, turkeys can become a little territorial. In fact, male turkeys can become particularly aggressive or territorial this time of year. And it's not unusual for male turkeys to be attracted to their own reflection in windows or in sliding doors or even in shiny car paint. So basically, they will see their reflection and see that there's another male turkey in the area, which will cause them to become aggressive towards their own reflection. And that's why sometimes this time of year, we see turkeys attacking vehicles, trucks, trying to get through our windows. But really what they're doing is just trying to scare off what they think is another male turkey in the area. It can be a little frustrating to have to deal with turkeys in an urban scenario like that, where they are becoming a little bit aggressive. But it is important to remember that turkeys do play a really vital role in Michigan's forests and in our grasslands. They do a lot to help us control insect populations and also to disperse seeds, since they're primarily feeding on insects and berries. If you do have turkeys in your area and you don't necessarily welcome them, then the best thing you can do is just take a look around and see what might be keeping them in the area. Turkeys, like so many other wildlife species, are motivated by food. And so if there is something they're eating from that's in the area, they will keep coming back if they can keep accessing that food source. So if you have a bird feeder in your backyard that's attracting songbirds, there's a really good chance it's also attracting turkeys or other small mammals like squirrels, raccoons, maybe even some deer. If you don't welcome those animals, then it's a good idea to take down those bird feeders.
And it'll help keep the bears away, too, if you happen to be in bear country.
No kidding. If you're basically anywhere above or north of Lansing at this time of year, it's a good idea to take down your bird feeders. We know there are a lot of bears in the Upper Peninsula and in northern Michigan, but they do seem to be moving farther south, especially in the springtime. So it's just good practice to take your bird feeders down this time of year if you can. There is a lot of natural food sources available for birds as they are arriving and as spring blooms are happening. So insect hatches are occurring pretty much everywhere. Lots of natural food sources for birds. So if you remove any food sources that may be keeping turkeys around, but they still continue to be troublesome, then you can consider scaring them away using noisemakers like air horns, banging pots and pans, barking dogs, or even rattling rocks around can be enough to scare turkeys out of the area. If they don't feel safe because there's these loud noises, most often they will move to a place where they do feel more safe and secure.
One of my favorites is a very large golf umbrella that you open and close repeatedly as you move towards them. And then if you can get someone else behind you with the pots and pans, it's even better because then you've got the noise and the big poofy scare thing that will help to drive them away.
Yeah, without a doubt. If you can use a combination of noise and movement techniques, those are really great places to start and have been proven to be effective at causing turkeys to leave an area. However, if you've tried those deterrent methods and they don't seem to be working, you do still have a few options. You can hunt these turkeys where hunting is allowed, especially right now during the spring turkey season. And if that option does not exist for you because you're in an area where hunting isn't allowed, then you can contact a nuisance control company to see if they can offer you any solutions if you're in like an urban area where hunting isn't allowed. Speaking of the spring season, it is still ongoing now for many hunters. And if you were hoping to get out there and fill a tag, you're not out of luck yet. Now, some spring turkey hunt periods have wrapped up already or others are closing soon. But don't hang up your calls just yet. If you were hoping to get out this spring, there still is some time and some licenses available left for you. So if you haven't picked up a spring turkey hunting license yet, now is the time to check and see what is available. So you can purchase your license or check for leftover licenses a few different ways. These leftover licenses are sold on a first-come, first-served basis. So you'll want to snag one quickly if you do plan to go. You can purchase those licenses through the DNR's Hunt Fish app, which is basically like a one-stop shop for getting all of your licenses. You can purchase them online through our e-license website or through your local license retailer. You'll just want to keep in mind, though, if you do purchase your licenses online, there is a shipping time frame. So your paper kill tag that you get through e-license will be mailed to you and can take 7 to 10 business days to arrive.
That's why it's a good idea to download that Michigan DNR Hunt Fish app where you can download your e-harvest tag. And so you get that instantly. You can use it. You don't have to wait for anything to come in the mail. You just have to have your app to validate your kill once you harvest that bird and then have some duct tape or other durable material to write the required information. Once you validate that tag, you'll get all that. You'll write that down and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's certainly the best option if you're pressed for time. Good option, quick, easy, just like everything you said, Eric. Definitely a good option for those who are like me and maybe didn't plan ahead to get your licenses early. I am always a last-minute shopper. And there's one more flexible license option for some of you hunters who might enjoy a May hunting season. The Hunt 234 license gives you the option to hunt May 3 through May 31st. And these are guaranteed licenses, so not a leftover. There's plenty of them. You can go and get these licenses, and they don't require a drawing or application, so you can purchase them right now. And they'll give you access to both public and private lands in the UP and Northern Lower Peninsula, plus private lands in the Southern Lower Peninsula. So if that sounds like a good option for your spring turkey season, those licenses are available for you now. So we hope you enjoy your spring turkey season. Now, we also just want to add a note on safety and bird handling. There's been increases in highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, also known as bird flu. This year, we have seen some outbreaks, and it's just a good idea to remember to take precautions when handling wild birds. So we haven't had any HPAI detections in wild turkeys, but it is still a good idea to only harvest healthy-looking birds. Make sure you're wearing gloves, wash your hands, and cook the meat to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you want to learn more about HPAI or safe handling of wild birds while you're field dressing them, please go to our HPAI or our avian influenza webpage. And one last thing, if you want to commemorate your spring turkey hunt, your spring turkey season this year, don't forget to pick up your 2025 Wild Turkey Cooperator Patch. This is really a great keepsake for your hunt and supports turkey conservation in Michigan. You can order those online through our partners' website. So the National Wild Turkey Federation helps us to pull the patch program together and sells those turkey patches, which all goes towards funding turkey conservation in Michigan. You can purchase those patches at minwtf.org. We will also link to the patches in the show notes. Well, that's all for this month's All Things Feathers segment. We hope you enjoyed talking turkey with us. Stick around because next up, we'll be talking about the little critter with the long tail, the muskrat.
Pure Michigan hunt applications are on sale now. If you want your shot of what is considered Michigan's ultimate hunt, pick up a $5 application or two. There's no limit to the number you can buy. If you're one of the 3 lucky winners, you'll get a hunting prize package worth thousands, as well as licenses for elk, bear, spring and fall turkey, antlerless deer, and first pick at a managed waterfowl area for a reserved hunt. Purchase anywhere hunting licenses are sold or online at michigan.gov/PMH.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.
What makes a muskrat guard his musk courage?
Yep, we're talking about muskrats. Their biology, their part in Michigan's history, and also their place on the menu. Now, muskrats might not get as much fanfare as the other semi-aquatic rodent, the beaver, but these little water dwellers are quite fascinating, hardworking critters that play a really vital role in our wetland ecosystems and in Michigan's history.
And they are truly courageous. I saw a muskrat one day just like wandering down the sidewalk near a swampy area, and I was like, oh, cool, a muskrat. I'm going to get some video or some photos of this muskrat, and maybe we'll have some stuff for work. I started walking towards that thing. It kind of saw me out of the corner of its eye. It turned around and literally chased after me. It was insane.
Yeah, I feel like if you look up Small But Mighty, it's a picture of a muskrat. Like, they don't weigh more than 3 pounds, but they will defend their territory and they will come after you. I'm like convinced, had I not like jumped back in my car, that thing would have bit me. Like, it would have ran all the way to me and then started gnawing at my ankles. The nature ankle biter, the muskrat. Well, they are one of our largest rodents. So speaking of, bitey chompies, they do have a single pair of ever-growing teeth because that's what makes a rodent a rodent. So they have to consistently chew to always wear their teeth down. And we mentioned they only weigh a couple of pounds, typically between 2 and 3 pounds. But with their tail, they're still about 2 feet long. So their body length is about 8 to 10 inches. And then the rest of that is this long, skinny, rat-like tail. It's like they look like, if for the Star Trek fans out there, almost like a tribble, but with a tail. When they're dry, anyways. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure that's an accurate description. If you're not familiar with Star Trek, but you are familiar with beavers or nutria or river otters, all of these species look remarkably similar. The key difference you are looking for is this rat-like tail. That's the only semi-aquatic rodent species. Oh, okay. Eric has pulled up a picture of a tribble. It looks like a toupee. And that's what I feel like muskrats look like. They just look like a toupee with a face and a tail. And long skinny tail. And the only thing else it's missing is its legs. Gotta have legs. You don't even really see the legs. No, you don't. And that's what it looks like, a running toupee with a tail. It's okay. I'll give it to you. You're absolutely correct. Just add the creepy tail and some claws with webbing in between them, and you have got a muskrat. And that. What does a muskrat do with their musk? How did they come up with the name? That's what I want to know. Like, who looked at it and was like, you know what? That's a muskrat. Maybe it was a person named Musk that first discovered them. That seems like it would track. Well, I don't know if they looked at them and called them that, or if they smelled them and decided that that is what their name was going to be, because they do have a musky odor. And in fact, if you ever wanted to eat a muskrat or use its fur, one of the very first things you have to do is remove its musk gland, because it's a stinky pouch, and the muskrat burrows smell like stinky musk. So I'm sure it was like they smelled it, they saw the tail, boom.
According to the interwebs, it got its name from the musky odor and its rat-like appearance. So yeah, I mean, it kind of tracks then. Yep, that's musky and it looks like a rat. Let's call that a muskrat.
I feel like there could have been some other fun names though.
Yeah. It's kind of like like people that call raccoons trash pandas. Like it just tracks. It gets in the trash. It's sort of panda-like. Trash panda, muskrat. Like, I mean, you could call it stink rat and it would be probably accurate as well.
Well, you're just talking about turkeys, thunder chicken. Hilarious and accurate, you know?
Yep.
Lots of good, clever names for these critters. Well, regardless.
Stink tribble. I think stink tribble is a good name for a muskrat.
Tribble.
A stink tribble, yeah. Moving on.
I just like to call them furry little crits. With these two ever-growing front teeth, they use them to mostly chew on plants. So they are big plant eaters, mostly aquatic plants since these are semi-aquatic mammals. So things like cattails, water lilies, grasses, things that grow along the water shore, but they are not strictly vegetarian and have also been known to eat fish or crayfish or snack on the occasional frog if the opportunity presents itself. So pretty much all other wildlife species, they're opportunistic feeders. You know, when you're hungry, you got to eat.
I could see a muskrat chowing down on a frog.
Oh, without doubt. It was coming after your toes. It'll go after a frog.
Yeah. Bet you a muskrat probably sees tadpoles and just gets all kind of excited.
Yeah. Or the fish that come in to eat the tadpoles, you know, a whole series of food chain events, I'm sure occurs.
I would imagine there's probably even like baby muskrats. I could see like a bass eating some baby muskrats, like snacking on those.
Bass, a fish eating a baby muskrat.
Yeah.
Ooh, I have seen that. Not exactly that scenario, but I saw what I thought was a muskellunge. A muskellunge eat baby minks.
Wow.
That was wild. That was a nature as metal moment. I was up in the Upper Peninsula on the Lake Michigan shoreline, kind of in a harbor. And so there's like boats everywhere. And there was this mama mink that was squeaking and was causing a ruckus. And I went down to see what was going on. And she had babies that were in the water that were swimming around that could get out. I watched them climb out. So it's not like they were stuck in the water. And then out of nowhere, up from the deep, came a big fish, sucked one down. And I guess people had seen it throughout the day. A bald eagle had snagged another one. And
Well, that's unfortunate.
should have got her babies out of there. But
Circle of life.
yeah, a fish got to eat, you know? It's just all part of it.
Yeah, according to this, largemouth bass have been known to eat baby muskrats, though it's pretty rare and opportunistic. So probably a similar situation here with the mink. A fish is like, hey, check out that baby mink, baby muskrat, baby whatever I can fit in my mouth and eat.
Yep. Like I said, things got to eat and nature is metal. You know, speaking of baby muskrats, though, I am pretty sure they're born blind and they stay blind for a while.
Yeah.
I should look that up. We have some pictures of baby muskrats that are like moving around on a log. One's feeding on some plants, but their eyes are a milky white. And I think that they might have delayed development of their eyes.
Yeah, so basically their eyes open around 10 days after their birth and they start to grow fur and become more mobile after that. But until then, they stay hidden in the nest. So, yeah, they need a lot of parental care early on.
Yeah, they do. Well,
blind, hairless, and helpless, much like myself most days.
Catch me on a good day. Now, you know, back to where you might find muskrats. So we mentioned they are water dwellers. And they do typically live near waterways and they can build these. They do typically live near waterways and they are quite exquisite engineers. So muskrats, kind of similar to beavers, will build lodges out of cattails or other pieces of vegetation along the stream banks. But they always have an underwater entrance for safety. So, you know, terrestrial mammals don't often find the entrances to these lodges, and so they can't get in there. And so they, come and go underwater through this little hidey hole to get into their muskrat lodge.
You want to hear something interesting? I can't remember who I was talking to. I don't know that it was that long ago, but I should ask around and see. Someone was going to do a drone survey in the winter along the riverbanks to look for heat signatures using, heat sensitive cameras to kind of do like a muskrat survey along the riverbank to see, okay, here's these hot spots. I don't know how that ended up panning out, but I should ask around because that sounds like it would be like an interesting thing to talk about.
Oh, completely. And while I was learning about muskrat lodges, I learned that they are so good at insulating the inside of those lodges that oftentimes inside the lodge, it can be 35 degrees warmer than the temperature outside. So using heat signaling would absolutely show you where these lodges are at because there's such a significant temperature difference.
Yeah, I guess the question would be like, how much of that, is there enough heat getting up and out to be able to, be sensed by the camera? And I think that was one of the questions that the biologist I was talking to, they were like, yeah, we're not sure if we're going to be able to sense them, but we kind of think we are. But I haven't heard anything about that. And I'm really racking my brain trying to remember who I was talking to.
Well, continue to rack your brain and follow up with them, report back, because that is super interesting. Were they looking to just know where muskrats are, or maybe population of muskrats?
I think it was they wanted to do some population estimates to kind of see, estimating how many muskrats might be in a given den and then multiplying that out, I would imagine. I'm sure I'm probably way oversimplifying this, complex population model to determine the number of muskrats. But that's because I'm not a biologist. So
that's not our job. It's our job to
report on. I'm happy to report whatever the findings are. But as far as setting up the study, probably not the best person.
Well, we do know that muskrats are prolific breeders. So from March to October, a single female can get pregnant with up to 3 litters, so 3 separate pregnancies, and each one can have 4 to 8 kits. So, if you do the math, that's a fast-growing population. So we have lots of muskrats here in Michigan. We just mentioned they are prolific at breeding. We have a pretty stable population of them, lots of opportunity to trap muskrats. Long before Michigan became a state, the fur trapping and fur trade industry was really pivotal to people who were here in this area.
Yep, in a former life, I probably had muskrat pants.
Your ancestors definitely did. Muskrats were really important to the fur trapping industry. Now, the most coveted fur was beaver because of its water-repelling properties, and it's extremely soft, and it's got all of these heat insulations, but muskrat really had their place too. They also have dense, water-repellent fur that was super valuable for lining coats or mittens or even trimming really lovely ladies' garments like their fancy coats. They were lined with various furs like beavers and mink, but also muskrat. Now, if you are interested in muskrats or maybe making your own muskrat garments, there are a lot of ways that you can get involved and learn more about muskrats and muskrat trapping across Michigan, which is still a really popular activity amongst the trapping organizations. So we have this long-standing trapping tradition here, and it is a species that you can legally trap for. If you've never trapped before, don't worry. We have everything that you need to know the regulations and how to trap in the 2025 Fur Bearer Harvest Regulations Summary, which is available on our website at michigan.gov/trapping. And even better, it can be a little daunting to get into trapping. You have to know what kind of traps to use, how to set them properly, what to do with the animal after you've caught it. So it's a really good idea to find a mentor. And fortunately, because Michigan has such a rich trapping history here, there are a lot of organizations that you can look to learn how to trap and to find a trapping mentor. A few really great organizations where you can find a mentor, or you can at least join a meeting or check them out, is the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association, the Northern Great Lakes Fur Harvesters, or if you're in the Upper Peninsula, the Upper Peninsula Trappers Association are all really great ways to meet experienced trappers who can really walk you through everything from setting the traps up to skinning the animal and preparing pelts so that you can also make your own muskrat mittens, which are a thing I actually just saw. There's a conservation officer in my neck of the woods who traps muskrats, and she made muskrat mittens for all of her bridesmaids in her wedding, and they were fabulous.
Outstanding. I would imagine that muskrat mittens would be quite warm.
Extremely, and great for the wintertime because water repellent too. So yeah, they were fabulous. So, those are good resources to check out. And if you want to earn your official Trapper Education Certificate, the DNR has a full education program that is available online and in person. So you can find that information on our website, or we'll plug it in the show notes.
So as useful as muskrat mittens would be and how cool that is, sometimes muskrats can present a little bit of a problem, right? Like, didn't your dad have a bit of a run-in with a muskrat in an unexpected way?
Yeah, sure enough. So this is a core memory from my childhood that lives rent-free in my head. He was mowing the lawn on the bank of a pond bed. So there's a pond in the backyard. He's mowing along the bank of it. And there's a little bit of an incline where there was a muskrat lodge that he didn't know about that had tunneled out the bank, the sediment under the bank. And so when he drove the lawnmower over the bank, it collapsed and the lawnmower rolled into the pond with him on it.
Oof. That's like super dangerous too, because that's the type of thing where you could get trapped under a lawnmower and drown.
It certainly is. Can be very dangerous, and it's a good idea to inspect your banks if you live near a wetland, or if you're going to take any heavy machinery or mowers, nearby someplace where there could be muskrat lodges under the ground that you're not able to see. It's a good idea to inspect those areas first.
Yeah, probably wise. I'm glad your dad was okay.
He was okay, and he found it really funny, and we learned a thing or two about muskrats that day. Well, that's it for our deep dive on this little aquatic muskrat species. Next time you see them, whether they're gliding across a pond or
chasing you down a sidewalk.
The next time you see them, we hope you'll have a little bit of a better understanding for what's going on with these critters and what makes them so unique to Michigan's wetlands.
Michigan.gov/DNR Trails is your destination for trail maps, trail etiquette, and trail closure information. Trail information for biking, cross-country skiing, horseback riding, hiking, off-road vehicle riding, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, and even water trails for kayaking and canoeing are available. While you're there, remember to check out information about pet-friendly recreation, track chairs, and the Iron Bell Trail. All available at Michigan.gov/DNR Trails.
Now is your opportunity to win a Wildtalk Podcast mug. As a thank you to our listeners, we'll be giving away a mug or two every episode. Our April mug winners are Randy Hopp and Jacqueline Barcroft. Check your email as we'll be getting in touch with you soon. They answered the question, according to fossil records, sandhill cranes have been around for how many years? The answer was 2.5 million years. To be entered into the drawing this month, test your wildlife knowledge and answer our wildlife quiz question. This month's question is, how fast can a turkey fly at top speeds? Email your name and answer to us at dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov to be entered for a chance to win a mug. Be sure to include the subject line as Mug Me and submit your answers by May 15th. We'll announce winners and the answers on next month's podcast, so be sure to listen in and see if you've won.
Michigan conservation officers are working hard to protect and keep the outdoors safe for current and future generations. If you witness a natural resources violation, you can call or text the Report All Poaching hotline 24 hours a day at 1-800-292-7800 or fill out the complaint form available at michigan.gov/RAP. If you would like more information on becoming a conservation officer, click on Become a CO at michigan.gov/conservation officers.
As a reminder, this is the 50th anniversary of Michigan's endangered species law. And we have raised $1,392 for non-game wildlife habitat from 21 very generous sponsors. That is a lot of money that goes directly to helping rare species conservation. And so it is an enormous thank you to those donors who have made that possible. And remember, if you want to hear your name read on air, simply visit michigan.gov/wildlife and click on the link to donate to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. And we will look forward to reading your name on air as a thank you for donating to support rare species conservation. Well, thank you for joining us on this May edition of the Wildtalk Podcast. Remember, if you have questions about wildlife or hunting, you can call 517-284-9453 or email us at dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov. We'll see you back here in June.
This has been the Wildtalk Podcast, your monthly podcast airing the first of each month and offering insights into the world of wildlife across the state of Michigan. You can reach the Wildlife Division at 517-284-9453 or dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov.